Thanks, James. Yeah, bottom left-hand corner of your screen on a PC, you'll see a microphone icon on the toolbar. All you need to do is to click that to unmute yourself. So we've got Kelvin and Neil and Alan and John and Matt Stevens and somebody called Model. Would you like to introduce yourselves or give us your name, please? Gentleman with who's just simply labeled Model. Okay, well, you have unmuted yourself, but we have no volume. Don't know whether you need to adjust the volume on you. Okay, it looks like it's muted. Okay, well, not to worry, not to worry. Sort that out. Right, so first of all, I guess, are there any questions you would like to ask? Otherwise, I'll give you an overview of the project and give you a progress report. But if there are any specific questions, it would help to know those just to help me with timing. Getting splendid silence here.
Sounds like a presentation would be a sensible way forward, Charles.
Okay, no problem. Right, so we promoted this at the back end of last year as a way of getting a larger layout to a guild show. And it wasn't a question of doing it more affordably, because at the end of the day, different groups producing different layout components will still have to be transported and housed. But there isn't an unlimited supply of large layouts out there. And one thing that members did feed back from the research that Jackie Nishaw's done is that they want to see continuous run layouts with realistic length trains. So as a way of achieving this, we thought, well, if we were to start a modular layout and the guild were to provide the fiddle yard and the curved ends, as it were, then we could invite groups to provide the scenic front. And I'm just going to share my screen with you to show the sort of thing that we have in mind. That's not what I want. That's what I want. There we go. Look. So the idea is that we'll have a 24-foot fiddle yard here across the back of the layout. That will not be scenic. And we have curved boards here at the end. I've just shown them as schematic form to provide a 7-foot radius curve on the outside and a 6-foot 6-inch radius curve or whatever on the inside. And then groups are invited to contribute either a 12-foot scenic module, or if they prefer, they can produce 24 feet. And we have standard boards which have been designed and being produced for us by Grange and Hodder at a promotional price. It makes the baseboard construction very easy and also makes it standard. And we're producing a template to ensure that the interface between the different groups, if we have two 12-foot modules, or the groups and the guilds boards here, will be consistent. So when they're both together at a show, we know that they'll line up, give or take, and there'll be a bit of flexibility, a bit of jiggle available on the day. So potentially that will give us a 24-foot scenic front to the layout, a double track configuration running at opposite directions, and the fiddle yard split between the two circuits. And we'll have additional spacing on the curves to make sure that modern stock 70-foot coaches and things like that can be run. We have 7 groups at the moment, 7 groups and individuals contributing. two groups contributing the full 24 feet and the others contributing 12s. So we should have enough to choose from to make a go of it. And I hope that people will join us when they see the potential, and perhaps at the point where we have the first modular layout at an exhibition. So that's the overall concept. Now, if we look at the fiddle yard in a bit more detail, and I will need to stop that share and do a different share, which is that one. Here we go. This is the kind of thing we have in mind. So we have a double track coming in at both sides. We'll have a fiddle yard that's split. The inside half of it will serve the inner circuit. The outside half will serve the outer circuit. It'll be electrically separated so that the modular layout can be operated DCC or analog or both, because we might well have two groups, each contributing a 12-foot module, one of which is DCC and the other of which is analog. But that should be perfectly possible. The groups will provide their own stock and provide a scenic break in the middle of the scenic front end if they are two 12-foot sections. Now, people say, well, how do you manage that? Because if you have two very different 12-foot sections, there's going to be a jar. And I hope we shall have enough groups to ensure that we won't need to choose two 12-foot sections that are completely different. We've had groups saying, well, would we be able to model Southern Railway Third Rail Electric? Would we be able to model Overhead Electric? Would we be able to model Continental prototype? Well, the answer is yes, with the caveat that really, if you're going to do something that's non-mainstream, you need to think in terms of providing the full 24 feet. Because it obviously wouldn't work very well if we got a 12-foot module that was based on West German practice and then a second 12-foot module that was pre-group English. That would make no sense at all in the context of an exhibition layout. So choosing a British outline, fairly mainstream, fairly broad time period would maximize the opportunity to exhibit. And as well as Grange and Hodder providing baseboards at a preferential price, we've also got other sponsors available who've offered to chip in as well. Ellis Clark he's offering £50 a group, a voucher of £50 per group. Elcut they're offering £100 a group. And we've had in principle offers from Squires, although that hasn't been nailed down at the moment. So hopefully that will come. And Pico are sponsoring the Guild section. They will provide an currently unspecified amount of the track free, and the rest of it will be at basically trade price. So that's really very helpful, and I'm very grateful to those traders for helping us with that. And again, I hope as the layout starts to be exhibited and traders start to see the potential for promoting themselves as a sponsor of the project, that will pick up. So that's a kind of overview of where we are at the moment. Are there any questions anyone would like to ask, please? I'll just stop the share for the moment. There we go. I'm guessing people have joined to get a feel for the project. Kelvin,
Charles.
Yeah.
Can I go then?
Yes,
Charles,
you can. Yes.
Are we envisaging back scenes on the scenic section?
I would anticipate that the scenic sections would have their own back scenes, and at the interface between the two scenic sections, if they're only 12 feet long, or the interface between the outer ends of the scenic section and the curved boards, which at the moment there is no intention to scenic, there would be a scenic break. It could be a bridge, it could be a tunnel mouth, it could be a tall building, whatever people want to do, really.
Right.
But yes, I would anticipate a back scene and end scenes, if you like, so that you're looking at a 12-foot long or possibly 24-foot long cabinet.
And when the two 12-foot boards interface, are you expecting the scenery there to be flat?
I mean, that's up to the people who are building it, really. I mean, they might just put a piece of plywood in and paint it grey, which not great, but if that's what people do, that's what they do. I would prefer that there was something there that was at least low relief.
Right.
So it could be, as I say, a tunnel mouth or a road bridge or something like that, or a factory end against a bland back scene. Yeah, something like that.
All right.
Yeah.
James, presumably, where the ends of the layout modules join up with the guild part of it, there will be some sort of template to ensure that the track is in the rightful position.
Yes, that's correct. We're having that template produced for us by Intentio. And each group will get their own template, and it will have the track centers, the track positions, the rail height, and the holes for the connecting bolts all marked on it. So basically, you put the template against the Grange and Hodder board, bolt the template to it, and when you lay the track, and if the track lines up with the template, it will line up with the next module.
Yeah, I mean this concept of modular layouts seems to be popular in France. We used to do an exhibition in France, and that's where I first encountered this. And what they do over there is they make their modules in 1 meter lengths, and they have I think there's 3 different entry and exit positions for the track, shall we say. It's either at the front of the module, in the center, or the back. And so long as it's rather like dominoes, so when they piece them together, so long as the track works, line up, everything's okay. The only problem is it sometimes provides a rather hilarious non-continuity of scenery.
Yeah,
that
was a concern that was raised by the initial participants of the project, and that's why we elected to go with a minimum length of 12 feet, so that there is continuity within 12 feet.
Yeah.
The purpose of the layout is to run realistic length trains. So having 4-foot or meter long modules didn't really work in that context for us. The idea is that you would have a 12 feet to run a train in, and if you've got a scenic break at the end, at each end of that 12-foot module, it's only the same as standing on an embankment and watching a train go past, and there's a road bridge at one end and a road bridge at the other, or a tunnel at the other. So we figured we thought that would work quite well. I'm familiar with the modular approach through my narrow gauge American modeling. In the narrow gauge world, the modular layout approach is very, very common. The slim gauge circle have a modular section who put on a display at each of their events, and it usually ends up as some kind of a serpentine arrangement end to end, because they build all their own baseboards to varying standards, I have to say, and we invariably find that when people turn up, if they try and create a continuous run, there's always this Olympic gap that the trains have got to leap. The thing never quite matches up. And that's why we approached Grange and Hodder to provide pre-cut plywood baseboards at a preferential price to try and guarantee that the quality of the woodwork would be consistent, and that the boards would line up, because a continuous run is most definitely what people were wanting, and it's the desired outcome.
Good.
I've got and have built the prototype board that Grange and Hodder have produced to our chosen standard size, and on the demos section of the virtual show, you'll see me building that board and all the various stages involved. Board goes together very nicely, and it's very well made. The template is designed to fit that board end, that specific board end. Yeah, that's what we're conceiving at the moment. Just going back to lining the track up at the ends, what we will require is that the track ends on an individual board will need to have a small amount of lateral and vertical movement available. So that could be done using a screw through the sleeper in a slot, so that the track can be moved just that little tiny bit to allow track to be fine-tuned if necessary. Hopefully it won't be necessary, because there should be enough flexibility in the bolting together of two boards to be able to line the tracks up. But with the best will in the world, we're looking at 0.5 millimeter error that we might need to take out.
And Sod's law says that if you get one of the two circuits lined up perfectly, the other one won't be.
Precisely.
So yeah. Yes, we've agreed that as a sort of a standard, really. People need reminding of it, and it's great that you've put that video together, James, to show the assembly of the Grange and Hodder board, and that's something that we'll point the groups at when we get the template and ship it out to them. Yeah. Are there any other questions, please, regarding modular layout project?
I presume you're envisaging that one group will be using the outer line and putting it in the street, and the other group will be on the inner.
Yes. And that means that each group will be running trains through the other's module if there are two 12-foot modules being displayed. And that's why there has to be compatibility of the electrics. We've got to be capable of being able to support DCC or analog.
And has that been worked out yet, James? What the interface will be on the electrics?
Not at the. We have discussed it. It hasn't. What we do need to do is write a proper spec for electrical continuity, exactly what connectors are to be used. I think we were thinking in terms of just normal chocolate blocks, aren't we, Charles, at the moment? Just very simple.
That's pretty much the easiest, really.
And then a piece of wire, which makes it very, very simple rather than a plug and socket.
Will there be a spec for the legs?
Yes.
Well, in the sense that the board height to the top surface of the board is 42 inches, and the legs have got to have an inch of vertical movement, vertical adjustability, let's call it.
Right.
But if groups want slot-in legs, groups want hinged legs, that's up to them, really. So long as the board can be erected and sits at 42 inches, that's all we need, really. I don't want to be too prescriptive with groups, because what we've got to remember is that the groups are not building these scenic layouts as they are, standalone, just for the guild. They're building them for themselves. They exist in their own right within their own club rooms, possibly with a fiddle yard at each end or as part of a bigger layout. The cost is down to the groups themselves. We'll support them with whatever discounts we can achieve, with whatever sponsorship that we can provide. But I don't be too prescriptive with groups, because otherwise they'll say, well, hang on a minute, we're building a layout here for the guild that's no use to us, and that's not the intention at all. Okay.
Charles, apologies if you've covered this already because I came in just a few minutes late, but how many groups have you got signed up or have expressed interest in participating?
We started out with 12 groups expressing interest, and then inevitably some dropped by the wayside. We now have seven. Seven groups and individuals. Two groups are doing the full 24 feet. The remainder are doing 12-foot modules. But of course, again, they may choose to do a second 12-foot module and make it 24 feet. The constraint seems to be that the space that the groups have in their club rooms or wherever they meet. And that's a limiting factor for some of them, that they say, well, we're going to put our own 6-foot fiddle yards on each end of this. Therefore, we can only have a 12-foot scenic module. Because by the time we put the fiddle yards on, it becomes 24 feet.
Right. Yeah.
And more. You can quite
And
easily hit
whatever.
about 40 feet if you're not careful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
presumably the idea is that when a local group is planning for a new layout, which they do from time to time, once they're aware of this, they will take that on board.
certainly, and I'm
the
also
new layout will be part of the guild modular layout.
well, that's an option. I mean, effectively, the guild will subsidise their new layout so long as their new layout can be exhibited as part of the modular layout project. So, I mean, that's one pitch. Another pitch is that groups can use a new layout being built and something like this being part of a bigger thing as a recruitment drive.
Yeah.
Come and get in at the ground, at the ground level, and be part of the whole thing. We've got a question that's coming by text from Matt Stevens. When will we see it? I think the earliest opportunity, realistically, will be Guildex 2025. I'd like to think that we'd have something at Guildex 2025. I believe that we have a large layout booked already, or the potential of one, from Ireland for 2024. I'm also talking to the Soar Valley Club, Loughborough. They have a large layout, which is scenic on three sides, giving 100 feet of viewing, apparently, which is enormous. Talking to them about the possibility of them attending. So we have some flexibility. But wouldn't it be great at say the 2025 show to have our modular layout running and also have another large layout from somewhere? That would be a real attraction, I think, to members.
Who's building the fiddle yards?
The guild will be building the fiddle yards. It's a good question, and it hasn't actually been determined. But the slot together boards aren't difficult to put together. We have room in the Keithley Club to build them, but I'd like to think that because of standard boards, the actual building of the boards could be shared out, possibly amongst the participating groups if they did one a piece, and then perhaps bring them together when it comes to track laying, because they would have to be put together for the track to be laid on them, realistically.
Definitely.
Yeah.
How many trains are you envisaging on for each line on the fiddle yards?
Well, if we make the fiddle yard boards 3 feet rather than the 30-inch standard for the scenic boards, 3 feet, we should be able to get 5 tracks on each circuit, each track 24 feet long, potentially. Well, less the point work at the ends, but you can get more than one train per track. So something like 10 trains, a dozen trains,
right,
in each
Certainly
direction.
There'd be enough space on each of the fiddle yard lines for an 8-coach train with a, express loco at the front of it.
Yeah. And if people are running way freights and maintenance of way trains and things like that, which are much shorter, then of course they can have multiple trains on one of the tracks. Anyone's running diesel multiple units or anything like that, two or three car sets. Yeah, I think
So
there will be sufficient variety to entertain visitors. If visitors stand and watch 12 trains go past in each direction, they're going to be standing there for an hour plus, aren't they? Thereabouts. I don't know how many people spend more than an hour at one layout at a show. But, you know, no, I wouldn't have thought. I'd have thought there'd be enough to entertain. Yeah, but that's down to the groups. It's down to what the stock that they bring. I mean, it may well be that if they model the scenics around the 1940s, 1950s, then there'd be flexibility there. They could run grouping period, they could run BR transition, because let's face it, not much changed. Certainly in the early days of BR, even by the late 1950s, 1960s, changing probably the road traffic and the figures on the platform, because dress changed, would probably give the right impression. I think there's some flexibility there. Any other questions, please? Okay, well, I have a question for you as visitors to this session. I'm not recognizing any names from the list of current participants. And is your interest in joining the group maybe to join the project? Is anyone interested in joining the project either as an individual or as a representative of their club?
I'll go first, and I'd be interested. I mean, I'm interested in the longer term. We have a club layout that we're hoping to exhibit this summer at Kempton Park, and once we've got that finished, then it's sort of thinking about the next stages. I'd be interested in either building some modules exactly to fit into that, or also I was intrigued as to whether it would be possible to take an existing layout, build suitable translator boards and plug it into the Guild Fiddler Yard. Would that be something you consider?
Yes, absolutely. It would have to be compatible. It would have to follow the standards,
well,
obviously, at the points of interface. Beyond that, absolutely.
But it would be useful to, I mean, it could turn an end-to-end layout into a roundy, which would enable a much more intensive train service and a more exhibitable product.
One question that a couple of the participating groups asked was, would the fiddler yard and the end boards be available to them for their own exhibition? So in other words, if they built a module or 24 feet, would they be able to exhibit that at their own show using the Guild's boards? And the answer to that is yes, but they would have to stand the transport costs. There'd be no hire charge or anything like that. Damage would have to be paid for, but so long as they cover the transport costs, that's a two-way street. You bring your scenic section to us, and you can have use of the curved boards in the fiddler yard, which will be in the Guild's store, which is currently at Whalley. So it's fairly central in the country.
Just to explain something, Kelvin is a member of the Prince's Risborough Club that I belong to, and he and I are both working on our 12-foot module.
Ah, right, okay.
Kelvin's particular interest is on the scenic side, so that's one of the questions he was asking. So how does that work?
I've already got proposals for tweaking your plan, so I'll show you those on Friday.
That's great, Kelvin. Nice one. Thank you.
Right, I didn't realise that Kelvin was part of the part of the Prince Elizabeth team.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, we're
that's-
very keen on the idea, not
Yeah.
just because of where I stand in the guild. It's something that we'd very much like to get involved with, in being able to exhibit a layout at a guild show would be something that excites us.
I think when we start exhibiting this, that other groups that have been looking at it, maybe some of those who were interested initially and then dropped out, might come back to the project. Actually, it was interesting that a couple of the groups that dropped out because they couldn't decide what they wanted to model. And I thought, well, they couldn't actually get agreement within the participants. It was something that they fancied the idea of, but they couldn't decide what to build. And I thought, well, that's interesting.
It is, yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I think
decided...
groups in that position, when they look at what other people have done, might think, actually, we could do something along the same lines. Yeah. They gain inspiration from the work of others.
We have an agreement in the club as to what the concept of the layout of what we're trying to model. How we do it is being debated at the moment, and the precise track plan is also being worked out. It's clear that the double track main line has got to flow through each module. What you do in terms of having track that comes off that within your module is clearly entirely up to us.
Absolutely, and if a group decided, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there. If a group decided that they wanted a deeper board than the standard 30 inches, 750 millimeters, then there's no problem with that, so long as the board extends backwards into the operating space. But what it can't do is extend forwards into the aisle, because obviously we've got aisle spacing, and if we've got a board that sticks out, everybody will walk and bump into it. So the front face has got to be smooth. But if somebody said, well, we'd like to do a gasworks or an industrial complex, and you can't do that in 30 inches, fine, have a wider board, but make sure that it extends backwards into the operating space. So there isn't really any great restriction other than the double track running through.
Yeah. Which doesn't have to be straight necessarily.
No, it doesn't have to be straight. It needs to line up at the ends. Obviously, if you're producing the full 24 feet, there's a lot more flexibility in terms of what you can do with the track plan. Yeah. The St. Neots group are actually going to build their own curved board. I'll just share my screen again for a moment, if I may.
Yeah.
I'll do that one. Yeah, so the St. Neots group are building the full 24 feet, but they're also going to build the first of the curved boards at the ends here in order to extend the scenic section into the curve. And they're going to put a curved front onto the scenic section. So instead of sort of coming out and running straight across, the track will be on a gentle curve across the 24 feet. And that's not a problem, but they need to build the first board on the curves as well to accommodate that. Again, it's a very, very flexible concept, really, and it's a question of what people want to do. We're very open to suggestions, and the main thing is that when whatever the groups are building isn't at a guild show, that it works for the groups. It has to be a good group layout. So we'll be as accommodating as we can to groups that want to be involved. Yeah. Hi, Nigel.
Can I ask a question? Russell Burridge here. I'm the Oakhampton picture up on the dot. I'm part of RISBA group as well, but I'm currently living abroad, so I won't be doing much physical work, but hopefully I'm going to do perhaps some building construction. My main question is, I'm not sure if you've answered it earlier, because I came in a bit late. What about vaccine heights and lighting helmets, etc.? Any thoughts on that?
We weren't planning on lighting helmets.
Okay.
Vaccines, yes. I think vaccine height again was pretty much down to the individual groups.
But
There
no
will
maximum
be
height or minimums or anything.
no, but the board height will be 42 inches. So groups need to be mindful that if they need to do any coupling or uncoupling or re-railing of stock, they're going to need to lean over that vaccine.
Sure.
I think we did discuss it. We didn't get prescriptive about it, but the suggestion was that an 18-inch vaccine would probably be
Okay.
as high as
sounds
would be
reasonable.
practical.
Yes. Yes, quite. Thank you.
Pleasure. Any other questions, please? Alan looks like he's talking, but again, we're not getting any volume, Alan.
He's waving his hands. I don't think he is. Oh, Alan Beaumont.
Yeah, Alan Beaumont. Oh, yes, sorry. Yes, well, Alan Parker's muted, but Alan, do you want to send a question maybe via a text, via the chat facility? If you look at the toolbar across the bottom of the screen, there is a chat icon. If you click on that, you'll be able to send us a message, and then we'll answer your question, or we'll try to. Great shirt, by the way. Okay, well, whilst you're just doing that, is there anything else, please?
I presume that there's no possibility of the two tracks joining in any place because of the incompatibility of the systems. For instance, you're having an auto coach running in one direction, and then you see it coming back on the other line.
Right. That's problematic for all kinds of reasons. We're not saying when a group builds the module that they can't have a crossover between the two tracks. That would be ridiculous, because for the layout to exist in its own right, that would be almost a requirement. But what we are saying is that the two circuits have to be electrically isolated. So there has to be a double isolation break on the crossover. Now, in the context of a guild show, if that crossover were to be used, it would mean that one group would have to stop operating whilst the other group moved the train across. Having said that, there is no reason why, when the autocoach does a run round the outer circuit and goes back into the fiddle yard, it can't be physically placed on the inner circuit to run back. But having a crossover to run it across, I think would be more trouble than it's worth operationally in an exhibition environment. But if the owner picks the thing up and moves it and puts it on the other circuit,
in our club, our feeling is at the moment that having a crossover on a 12-foot module is a very, very bad idea electrically, because with the best will in the world, even if it's double insulated, it is not impossible for a locomotive to accidentally cross over from DCC to DC and vice versa and blow something up.
Yeah,
on a 24-foot module, clearly you've got the whole kit and caboodle. You can do what you like. But on a 12-foot module, I think having a crossover should be prescriptive against. I really do. That was our conclusion after some discussion at our club.
Well, we'll see what people think. That there was a chat question James from Alan
Indeed.
Beaumont?
Oh, Alan Beaumont, yes. I'm in Australia and find this concept very interesting. The O gauge is growing rapidly here, and there are a couple of well-formed and strong groups here. It's interesting, Australia was one of the sources for the N gauge modular system. So it's something that Aussies seem particularly keen on.
The Guild actually has quite a strong, if not that numerous, membership in Australia. One of the forum moderators is in Australia, and we have a member of the IT team also based in Australia.
Yep.
So with digital technology, it's perfectly possible for someone living abroad to be an active member of the Guild, which is very, very good, really.
Yep. The other modular systems that exist at the moment, I have looked at those quite carefully to see if we're going in a direction that we shouldn't be going in. Interestingly, one of the standards, like ours, has the tracks down the center of the board, which is one of the HO standards that the Americans tend to use. The N gauge one doesn't. That has the track towards the front of the board. Again, double track, with the concept that the piece of track that links two boards together is a 4-inch piece of standard Kato track, I believe, that you insert.
Actually, sorry, go on.
Sorry, Charles.
I was going to say the idea of a short section of track being inserted across the modular joins was where I started out, actually, to allow that jiggle. But with a template, I think we probably, so long as people use that template, we probably don't need to do that. We did discuss the position of the tracks on the boards and whether it was a good idea to have them offset front to rear. The problem with having the tracks close to the front of the boards is that the group which operates the outer circuit at an exhibition have nothing to do except run trains round, because there's no space for any loops, sidings, or anything on the outside of the main line. And the idea of having them centralized on a standard board was that it would enable building a station and putting a bay in, or a loop in, or a lay-by siding, or some low relief industry or something to sit in front of the main running line on the outside. Pretty boring if you're at an exhibition for 2 days and all you can do is run trains round in circles and that's it. Similarly for people watching, I mean, it's more interesting if a slow train comes in and it goes into a holding loop or a holding lay-by, whilst a faster train passes and then the slow train follows behind. That kind of thing. A local service pulls into a country station in the loop, and the express passes by. Photographically, it's more interesting as well, trains passing each other. So that was where we ended up with that one.
Is there any reason why, and we're modeling the inner side, that the outer line could have a passing loop or a lay-by siding that would be operated by the other team?
So the inner pit, the group operating the inner circuit would cross over to the outer circuit?
No, What we're modeling a quarry on the inner side,
right? And
we've fairly well kind of fits on that, but instead of having on the outer line just a simple plain piece of track with nothing on it, you could put in a long lay-by siding, which would be operated by the adjacent 12 foot. I
Yes,
can't see why.
yes. So sorry, I'm with you now. Yes, that would be perfectly reasonable. As I say, if we've got two 12-foot modules, then each group will be operating through the other group's module. And if there's a siding or something on it, then the other group will be operating that, which means that the point operation needs to be local. But yes, that's perfectly possible.
So or they would say, right, we want to put a train into the holding loop, and you just operate the points for them, and they park it there until such time as they want to take it out.
Yeah, because I mean the two groups that are operating the layout are not going to be distant from each other. It's possible that the people who are operating the fiddle yard on the outer circuit might prefer to do that from outside the layout, and the people operating the inner circuit might prefer to do that from the inside. But otherwise, no, they're not going to be vastly different. I think that will provide operating interest.
Yes, it also helps with the 12-foot module being operated as a standalone unit.
Yes,
without the guild, the fiddle yard, potentially.
Yeah. As I say, that the things that the modules have got to work in their own right, and not just as part of an exhibition layout for the guild.
I mean, the other benefit of having the tracks down in the centre of the end of the scenic modules is that we have the potential to reverse one 12-foot module compared to the other. So it can be flicked around and operated the other way around because it's the track's in the middle. The edge of the board will still line up if you stick to the 750, of course.
Yes, if it's standard width board, yeah.
So I think it would be useful for groups to be able to let us know whether they're planning a 12-foot module, if they are doing 12-foot. Any 12-foot module, whether it can only be one way round, i.e., that if you do have a back seam, couldn't the back seam be removed? Can it be viewed from both sides? A layout that can be viewed from both sides with potentially two different back seams, which can be fitted at the time, would allow much more flexibility for the guild in choosing layouts for a show. So if that can be done, that would be brilliant.
Yeah, it's a very good point, actually, James. Thanks for raising that, because if we're choosing two 12-foot modules and we have one that's in an urban setting and the other that's in a sort of bucolic country setting, but one of them can be reversed and have a different back scene on it, that might make for a visually more complete thing. Yeah.
It rather scuppers the idea of having half relief buildings then, doesn't it?
That would be much more difficult to achieve, yes.
Another little challenge. Thank you, James.
Hey, we're modelers, we're ingenious. We have great imagination.
Well, I mean, you could have a half relief building potentially at the front with the inside details, and it might make it really rather interesting.
Right, you're building the model of the Crusher then.
Thanks, mate.
Quite a lot of layouts actually have half relief buildings at the front, which provide a scenic break sometimes. You model something that covers the exit to the fiddle yard, and it's modelled in low relief, and best viewed kind of from the end or something. That's not uncommon at all.
Right.
And that would be an ideal candidate for a reversible board, of course. Yeah.
There you are, Kelvin. Reversible board design, please.
Yeah, it's possible. Yeah, it's possible.
Let's try and do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the more reversible boards we have, the more flexibility we have for choosing layout.
It's true. It's true, and not just that, but as I say, it will make it easier to create something that's that's scenically harmonious across the two 12-foot modules. Yeah. How are we doing for time, James?
Well, we're 9 minutes from the scheduled end. We've covered a lot of ground, I would say, Charles. I think it's been a very useful session. It's given us some ideas, some clarity.
Okay.
So,
well, are there any other questions before we draw this to a close then? No?
no, doesn't appear so.
Okay, well, I can be contacted through the contacts page on the website. Just if you've got any questions, just ping me an email. And certainly if you're interested in getting further details about it for the purposes of joining in with the project, I'd be very, very interested to hear from you.
Well, thank you very much, Charles.
Thank you very much for attending this morning.
So, yes, thank you everybody for taking part. And we look forward to seeing you in other parts of the virtual show. And I hope you enjoy the day.